Story 1. I twisted and sprained my ankle on Monday morning while packing up our camp after Labor Day weekend. Since I've experienced this a few times in the past, I didn't think it was necessary to get it checked out. Who wants to pay $1,000 for urgent care just to be told to rest and ice it? Yay, America. So, I went to work on Tuesday. I managed to get through the morning tasks and explained the situation to my boss, telling him that I'd need to take the rest of the day off because my ankle was swollen, painful, and needed rest in order to heal. He got upset because, apparently, taking time off for any reason is an inconvenience, and snapped at me for not planning to visit the doctor. On Wednesday, I went back to work, still limping and wearing improper footwear. The only thing I could tolerate on the injured foot was a crock, since anything else caused unbearable pain. The first thing my boss said was, "Don't you think you should get that checked out? I don't understand why you won't just pay for it." I explained again that I've had this kind of injury before, and I was sure it wasn't broken. In fact, it wasn't even as swollen as it has been during past injuries. I also wanted to be at work to stay on top of things, which would make everyone's job easier. I just needed to take it easy for a couple of days, which wasn't an issue since I could do 90% of my tasks from my desk. The remaining 10% could easily be picked up by my coworkers, especially since if I didn't show up, they'd have to do 100% of my workload. Despite my explanation, my boss responded with more attitude. So, I asked if I'd be getting paid sick time for the day I missed. He said no, not without a doctor's note, even though the injury was clearly visible, and I was making an effort here. At this point, I was fed up. A little later, I decided to leave and go to the doctor to get the note my boss seemed so desperate for, knowing full well they'd just confirm what I already knew and recommend resting it for 3-5 days. After an X-ray and a quick examination, the doctor confirmed, "Yes, it's sprained. Keep doing what you've been doing." I told them my boss requested a note for the day I missed. The doctor asked if I wanted to return to work and do what I could, while staying off my ankle as much as possible. I explained that's exactly what I'd been trying to do, but I was open to taking a couple of days off if it would be more beneficial. The doctor then returned with a note stating I could return to work on 9/9, which was the following Monday. I took a picture of the note and sent it to my boss. His only response was, "What's wrong with the ankle?" I didn't bother replying, as I felt no response was needed. He had his note. All I wanted was a single day of sick time, just 8 hours. Now, because of his stubbornness, he's paying me for 4 days, a total of 32 hours. He can't refuse a second of it. Story 2. My former boss is the worst human being I've ever met. He did all sorts of things to mess with anyone he didn't like. So a while ago, I was at a family event in a local park, walking with a young boy from our family who is developmentally disabled with Down syndrome, Ben. Ben does fairly well, all things considered, but he's always been sensitive to anyone making fun of the way he looks or his condition. We are just having a good time on our little stroll, Ben and I both enjoying the day. Along comes my boss walking toward us. I'll call him Rob. I cringe at seeing him but smile and say hello to play nice. "Rob, there's something you don't see every day. A pair of ugly retards walking together." Ben bursts into tears as Rob laughs and walks off. I deal with Ben and ignore Rob. I'm super pissed and trying to calm Ben down because for a few minutes he was totally distraught. Finally, I get Ben to focus on how he has me and a lot of other awesome friends and family, and that Rob is a stranger and what he thinks doesn't matter. We walked some more and I saw that Rob was at the park with his wife and teen daughter having a cookout, and he had apparently been on his way back to his family from a trip to the toilet when he saw us. Back to being super pissed. I went back to our gathering and talked to an adult cousin of mine, Jake, telling him what happened. Jake wanted to get revenge on Rob, but I reminded him that this was my boss. I didn't want Rob to be able to know the revenge had anything to do with me, because then he'd make my work life even worse than he already had. So Jake asked me for anything I knew about Rob that might help. I told Jake a bunch of things about Rob. but the relevant info here is that Rob liked to drink a particular kind of locally made beer at a certain bar. Rob had talked of having drank there on the previous Friday night, while his wife and daughter were away visiting her family. Also, Rob had recently told a story at work about his wife's obsession with a particular little green fictional character. Let's call it Yabby Boda. Turns out his wife kept a stuffed Yabby Boda on their bed at all times. I wasn't there for the revenge setup itself because I didn't want Rob to see me, but Jake filled in the details afterward. It was basically this. Jake approached Rob and put an arm around his shoulders and tried to kiss him. Rob pushes him off. Rob, what are you doing? Rob's family is now paying attention. Jake, I am just so excited to see you. Sweetie, Friday night was so amazing. Rob, what are you talking about? Jake, seriously, you're going to act like you don't remember now? I know you were a bit tipsy after all of those specific local beers at the local bar, but certainly you remember what happened later. Rob, nothing happened later, or ever. I don't even know your name. Jake, really? You were screaming it on Friday. Rob, turning red, you lying son of a... Rob's wife interrupting. Listen, I don't know who you are, but this is my husband. I'm sure you have him mistaken for someone else. Please just leave us alone. Jake, oh no, I'm not mistaken. We had the best sex ever on Friday night, and now he's acting like he doesn't even know me. Rob's wife, I told you, this is my husband. You're mistaken. Jake, oh, maybe I am. I guess it was someone else who took me back to his place on Robb Street and had great sex with me on the bed right next to Yabby Boda. Sorry. Jake turns and walks away. Rob's wife, oh my God, Rob, WTF is wrong with you? You're gay now. Really? Already long story made a bit shorter. Rob's wife wasn't real happy with him anyway, and this was apparently the tipping point that made her file for divorce soon thereafter. Rob frequently complained at work in the following months about how he didn't care about his wife, but really missed his daughter and how much it sucked to live in his new place compared to his old home. Every time he complained about his lack of a home life at work, I knew he did it to himself when he was mean to a developmentally disabled kid. The best part is he never figured out I was involved at all. Story 3. So, a little background. I left home after my aunt confronted my mother about not punishing my brother for filming me while I was changing and sharing that video with his friends. Instead of addressing the issue, my mother called the police on my aunt. Now, I'm living in a youth home, and no one knows where it is, except for my aunt. My family has cut contact with her, as well as my brother. Now, onto the story. I've been limiting contact with my mother, and I haven't communicated with my brother, apart from occasionally leaving his messages on read. My mother has been constantly messaging me, saying she'll let me come home if I apologize for making a scene, and if I apologize to the rest of the family for putting them through this situation. I ignored her. Then she called me, and this is how it went. Entitled Mother, come home. Your tantrum has gone too far. You need to apologize, get a grip, and come home. I just listened. I didn't reply. Entitled Mother, I said come home and apologize now. Me, no. I hung up the call. She called back 15 minutes later. I picked up and listened for a while, until she said something that really got to me. Entitled Mother, come home now. I don't want to wash dishes, do laundry, and cook while I work. It's exhausting. You used to do all of that when your grandmother wasn't here, and now she's not here, so you have to do it. I stayed silent. Entitled Mother, do you hear me, you ungrateful child? You better. I cut her off. Me. No, you listen to me and remember this. I will never go back home to you, and I will never go near you or him again. Take this as a courtesy notice. I am no longer your daughter. You will never see or hear from me again. I hung up and blocked her number. 2 days later, my aunt messaged me and told me my dad was at her door. I hadn't seen him since I was 5, after my parents divorced because of his affair. My family hates him for that. My aunt was furious that he showed up at her door. He politely asked to know where I was, and if he could come see me. My aunt, in her usual style, didn't hold back and reminded him of his affair. He apologized and asked for my whereabouts again. My aunt messaged me, asking if I was okay with my dad knowing where I was. I told her it would be fine if we met at a cafe or restaurant nearby. So, we met today and had a nice breakfast together. He asked me what was going on and why I had run away. I thought he knew, so I asked, "What do you think?" He said my mother told him I had been scolded and grounded for something, and that I ran away because I was mad. She made it sound like it was just teenage angst. I was shocked. I told him that wasn't even close to the truth. I told him everything what had happened, what my mother did or rather didn't do, and how she reacted when I tried to tell her I felt unsafe. He was furious. He was angry that he hadn't known sooner and that my mother had lied to him, trying to manipulate him into forcing me to come home. After we finished talking, he told me he was going to confront my mother. He said he would take me away with him and sue her for abuse because some of the things she did to me fall under emotional and psychological abuse. He also said he plans to cut off my brother's education fund and transfer it to me instead. He left after that, and I don't know what happened afterward, but I think he's going to talk to his lawyers soon, and I might be meeting with them too. Story 4. Alright, listen up, mates. I gotta share this wild ride from back in my waiter days at an Indian joint. Picture this, it's almost closing time, and the scent of curry and spices is wafting around like a warm hug. Now, I wasn't your typical waiter, all formal and stiff. Nah. I rocked the laid-back vibe, cruising through each shift with a grin. So there I was, weaving between tables, scribbling orders and delivering plates with a flair that would make Tom Cruise in Cocktail proud. Then, out of the blue, enters Karen. Yeah, Karen with a capital K, the queen of demanding and the empress of entitlement. She's accompanied by her squad of gal pals, and you just know this night is about to take a spicy turn. These ladies settle in, and Karen's blabbering about some TikTok food blogger she'd been binge-watching. Apparently, said TikToker had dished out the gospel of Indian chicken masala with a side of spices that could wake the dead. I'm there, half listening as I swirl around, when suddenly Karen snaps her fingers and waves at me like I'm her personal genie. Now, I've dealt with my fair share of folks snapping their fingers, but this was on a whole new level. I walk up, casual as can be, and she barks, "Chicken masala, 3 plates, chop chop." I'm like, "Sure thing, ma'am. Be back in a jiffy." Off I trot to the kitchen, only to find out that the chicken masala train has run out of steam. It's the last one on the tracks, and there's no magic wand to conjure up more. The kitchen crew gives me sympathetic looks. They know what dealing with Karens entails. With a sigh, I return to the table and tell Karen, "Hey, I'm really sorry, but we just ran out of chicken masala. The last one went to that lovely lady over there." I point to a woman happily diving into her plate, and Karen's face turns from sour to soured milk real fast. She flips her lid, starts fuming like a kettle about to blow. "This is unacceptable," she screeches. "I saw it on TikTok, and I want it now." Before I can even react, she gives me a solid shove in the gut. Yep, a literal shove. I mean, who does that? But Karen's just getting started. She stomps over to the lucky lady who snagged the last masala. "Hey lady, why are you doing this to me, to us?" The lady looked confused as hell. "Sorry, what do you mean?" Karen continued. "I mean you depending on the shape of you right now. I think you ate a lot in your lifetime. Why do I have to suffer and starve to death because of a fat person like you?" It was embarrassing she called an innocent lady fat for no reason. The lady just laughed at her face and told her to eat herself alive then. Just when I'm about to pull out my metaphorical popcorn, our manager swoops in. He's this chill dude, sporting a beard that could rival any hipster's. He's heard enough of Karen's theatrics and decides it's time to put on his mediation hat. He steps in, all calm and collected, and tries to reason with Karen. "Ma'am, I'm sorry for the inconvenience, but there's only 1 plate left. That's all we could manage to do. I'm sorry." And before anyone could react, Karen told him that she wants that plate. Then she remembered her friends and told them, "Oh, does anyone want it? I thought it should be me since I brought you all here." And she laughed a very silly laugh. Her friends smiled back and told her it's okay, they can order something else. They know that sometimes Indian food can be hard to eat late at night. Karen demands to be compensated, as if the universe itself owes her a chicken masala. Her friends look embarrassed as hell, and they're whispering something along the lines of, "Karen, just let it go." But Karen's determination is unshakable. "You better make it up to me, and make it good," she declares, probably thinking she's just discovered a genie in a manager's uniform. Our manager, though, has other plans. He puts on a sly grin and says, "All right, ma'am, I'll make your chicken masala myself. Extra generous, just like I do for myself at home." Now, let me tell you, our manager had a bit of a reputation for his love of spicy food. Rumor had it he'd eat chili peppers for breakfast. The kitchen crew exchanged knowing glances as they started prepping the dish. I could practically see the flames dancing in their eyes. When the masala arrives at Karen's table, it's a masterpiece of spice. The aroma alone could have cleared sinuses from a mile away. Karen digs in, blissfully unaware of the impending heatwave about to hit her taste buds. As she takes her first bite, the transformation is like watching a volcano erupt. First, a furrowed brow, then a beet-red face, and finally, tears streaming down her cheeks. It's like she's entered a spicy food obstacle course and didn't even realize it. Meanwhile, I'm trying to keep a straight face, but it's like mission impossible. Our manager's spicy revenge is legendary, and watching Karen's grand unveiling of regret is pure gold. She's gulping water like it's going out of style, fanning herself with the menu, and her friends are laughing so hard they're practically snorting. In the end, Karen surrendered to the spice gods, and our manager just casually strolled by, giving her a wink and saying, "Hope you enjoyed your special order, ma'am." And there you have it, folks. The night I watched a TikTok-fueled Karen meet her match in a plate of spicy chicken masala. Just goes to show, you mess with the spice, you get the burn. Story 5. I'm not sure if this is the right place to post this, but I can't think of anywhere else. If you remember me, I'm the guy whose wife made our kids release a wild bunny in the middle of the yard after I specifically told her to take it to the bushes to release it safely. Well, a hawk swooped down and took the bunny right in front of our kids, who were 4 and 5 at the time. They freaked out, blamed their mother, and came running to me in tears. Ever since, they started calling her Bunny Killer. That nickname seems even more appropriate now, especially after everything that has happened. At the time, what happened with the bunny seemed like a huge deal, but now that incident feels like ancient history compared to what I have to share today. I'm a free man now. My divorce was finalized a couple of months ago. Buckle up because this story is long and complicated. I'll include a short version at the end for anyone who just wants a quick summary. A little background: I showed my wife my original Reddit post about the bunny incident, and she was furious. So much so, we had a massive argument. After that, she gave me the silent treatment for a week. I even tried to get the kids to stop calling her Bunny Killer, but despite punishments like groundings and timeouts, the nickname came back every time they were upset with her. Eventually, after a few weeks of her cold shoulder routine, she admitted she should have listened to me about the bunny. She claimed she felt like she had to defend herself because she didn't want to be wrong. I accepted her apology and apologized for making the post. I also suggested we go to marriage counseling, but she refused, insisting there was nothing wrong with our marriage. Since things seemed to be getting better, I decided not to push it. Then, a few weeks later, my eldest daughter came to me and said she needed to tell me something. She had been mad at her mother for more than just the bunny incident, but was too scared to tell me before. I reassured her and told her she could tell me anything. What she revealed shocked me and changed everything. My daughter said that for months, her mother had been bringing a man over to our house on some Saturdays when I was at work. She referred to him as her special friend and had even bribed the kids to keep quiet about it. My eldest knew something was wrong, but had to work up the courage to tell me. I had noticed my wife acting differently for a while. she was more short-tempered with everyone, especially the kids. When I brought up my concerns after showing her my first Reddit post, she lashed out at me, insulting my appearance, my character, my habits, and even my family. She went so far as to bring up that I used to smoke, even though I quit over 10 years ago. After that, she locked me out of our bedroom and cried loudly enough for the whole house to hear. When my daughter told me about the man coming over, I started putting the pieces together. My wife was cheating. Her behavior reminded me of the mood swings she had when she was pregnant with our children, only worse. I later learned from a counselor and friends that her erratic mood swings were likely due to hormones and guilt from her infidelity. I'm no expert in psychology, but it made sense. I wanted to believe it was all just a misunderstanding, but I couldn't shake the feeling something was seriously wrong. So, I installed a few hidden cameras around the house without telling anyone. I had them delivered to my work to avoid suspicion and set them up while my wife was out for a girls' night with her friends. The setup was easy, and in just a few hours, I had access to live footage from my home on my laptop, work computer, and home PC. Initially, I thought I might be going overboard, but I told myself that if I was wrong, I could just remove the cameras, and no one would be the wiser. But I wasn't wrong. Within the first week, I had all the proof I needed. The man my wife had been seeing was a former colleague of hers. I remembered him well because he and my wife had been close when she still worked. She had quit her job years ago to be a stay-at-home mom after our first child was born, a decision we both agreed on at the time. Despite quitting, she stayed in touch with her old coworkers, who were some of her best friends. But this particular friendship had crossed a line. The man my wife was seeing was about 10 years younger than her. She had mentored him at her former job, and they stayed close even after she left. My wife, who's over 40, looks much younger and has been mistaken for someone in her 20s on several occasions. I guess she took advantage of that. I confided in my sister about the situation and showed her the footage from the cameras. My sister admitted she had suspected something for a while. She had once seen my wife at a bar, getting a little too close to a man that wasn't me. She didn't tell me at the time because they weren't kissing or doing anything outright inappropriate, just a lot of touching on the back and shoulders. Since she wasn't certain, she kept it to herself. With my sister's support, I decided to take things a step further and ordered a GPS tracker. I hid it in the trunk of my wife's car and tracked her movements on one of her girls' nights out. My sister and her husband followed the tracker in their car. That night, my wife went 20 miles out of town to a completely different place than where she said she was going. And, of course, she met up with her special friend. My sister and brother-in-law observed them from a distance, and what they saw confirmed my worst fears. The man kept rubbing my wife's belly while they were talking, and my sister caught it all on video. When I saw the footage, I knew my wife had to be pregnant with his baby. Her mood swings at home, the belly rubbing, it all made sense. My sister and brother-in-law had to calm me down because I was on the verge of losing it. I considered drowning my sorrows with alcohol, but my sister rightly pointed out that drinking would only make things worse. I decided to take a leave from work, but I told my wife I was going on a business trip. She was thrilled and didn't even try to hide her excitement that I'd be gone for a while. Who was this woman? She certainly wasn't the person I married almost 20 years ago. During my business trip, I stayed with my sister and her family, focusing on collecting evidence and planning my next steps. It was a tough few days. I wanted to confront my wife immediately, but my sister convinced me to hold off until I had more proof and could speak with a lawyer. It took everything in me to resist the urge to blow up at her the next time we spoke on the phone, especially when she asked how my trip was going and whether I had seen any interesting sights. She was being so casual, acting like she wasn't doing anything wrong while continuing her affair behind my back. I reached out to a divorce lawyer to go over my options. He advised me to gather as much concrete evidence as possible and to be strategic about the timing of any confrontation or divorce filings. He also told me not to move out of the house since that could be seen as abandonment and might impact the custody of the kids. This gave me even more motivation to keep quiet, but it also made me feel trapped. I had to pretend everything was normal while secretly preparing for the end of my marriage. At this point, I was beyond angry. I was disgusted with her. She had the nerve to act like she was a devoted wife and mother, when, in reality, she was sneaking around with another man, possibly even carrying his child. The only thing that kept me from confronting her was knowing that I had to protect my kids from this fallout. They were too young to fully understand what was going on. But I knew that when everything blew up, it was going to be messy, and I had to be ready. When I returned home from my trip, things were more awkward than ever. My wife acted like nothing had changed, but I was distant. I couldn't bring myself to even look at her the same way anymore. I'd catch her trying to engage in small talk, asking about work or the kids' schedules, and I'd respond with short, clipped answers. I'm sure she noticed something was off, but she didn't press me on it, probably too distracted by her secret affair. Meanwhile, I kept monitoring the cameras and checking the GPS tracker. The visits from her special friend didn't stop. In fact, they increased, especially when she thought I was going to be late from work. Each time I saw that man walk into my house, my home, I felt my blood boil. I was living in my own personal hell, knowing that she was betraying me right under my nose. One evening, I came home early without warning, hoping to catch her red-handed. I walked in through the back door, and sure enough, her special friend was there. They were sitting on the couch, much closer than they should have been, though nothing inappropriate was happening at that exact moment. They both jumped up when they saw me. My wife's face turned pale, and her eyes darted to the man, probably trying to figure out how to explain this away. I played it cool. I casually asked who the man was and why he was in our house. My wife stammered something about him being an old friend, and that they were just catching up. The guy tried to play it off, too, introducing himself like we'd never met before. But I wasn't having it. I could see the panic in both of their eyes, so I let them squirm for a bit before I told them to leave. I didn't explode on them, I was saving that for later. They both left quickly, and my wife tried to act like everything was fine. She claimed they were just friends, and that I was overreacting, but I could tell she was scared. That night, I didn't say much to her. She kept trying to explain herself, saying things like, "You're being paranoid," and "We were just talking." But I knew better. The whole time, I just kept thinking about the video footage, the GPS tracker, and how she was lying to my face. I needed more concrete proof, so I could bring it up in court. I wasn't about to let her walk away from this without consequences, especially if she was pregnant with another man's child. The next few days were tense. I kept things cordial with her for the sake of the kids, but I was already working on getting my finances in order, preparing to file for divorce, and making sure I had a solid custody case. I didn't want my kids caught in the middle of this, but I also couldn't let her get away with what she had done. A few weeks later, my wife came to me in tears. She admitted to the affair, but she tried to twist the story, claiming she had been feeling lonely and neglected. She said it was a mistake, and that she wanted to work things out. At that moment, I realized she had probably sensed that I was getting ready to leave her and was now trying to do damage control. She begged me to forgive her, saying that we could go to counseling and fix things. But I had already made up my mind. I told her I knew everything about the affair, the pregnancy, the lies, all of it. Her face went pale, and she started sobbing, but I wasn't swayed. I calmly explained that I had hired a lawyer and that I was going to file for divorce. I let her know that I had all the evidence I needed to prove her infidelity, and that she wouldn't be getting a free ride out of this. She cried and pleaded with me not to go through with it, but it was too late. The day I filed for divorce was both the most heartbreaking and liberating moment of my life. As much as I had emotionally prepared for it, a part of me still clung to the memories of the woman I thought I had married. I knew deep down she wasn't that person anymore, but it still hurt. My lawyer and I made sure everything was airtight. I wasn't going to let her manipulate me or play the victim, especially not after everything she had put me through. When she was served the papers, she completely lost it. She accused me of tearing the family apart, of being cold and unfeeling. She screamed that I was throwing away everything we had built over one mistake, but I wasn't buying it. I reminded her that she had made her choices and that I was just making mine in response. It was surreal, standing there while she melted down, acting like the victim when she was the one who had destroyed our marriage. The kids, thankfully, weren't around to witness it. Once the divorce proceedings started, things got nasty fast. She hired her own lawyer, and suddenly, the woman who had begged me to forgive her turned into a ruthless opponent. She tried to argue that I wasn't involved enough with the kids, that I worked too much, and that she deserved full custody. I expected as much, though. I had already lined up witnesses, video footage, and the GPS data, showing how often she had her affair partner over while I was working or traveling. The evidence spoke for itself. The custody battle was the worst part. I didn't want to take the kids away from her completely, but I also didn't trust her to prioritize their well-being when she was clearly putting her own desires first. I fought for joint custody, and thankfully, the judge saw through her manipulative tactics. In the end, I was granted shared custody, and she got visitation rights. It wasn't perfect, but it was the best I could hope for, given the circumstances. As for the house, I managed to keep it, though I had to buy her out of her share. She wanted to move in with her affair partner, which, honestly, made things easier for me. I didn't want her living under the same roof where she had betrayed me. I renovated the house after the divorce was finalized, making it into a space that felt like mine again, a place where my kids and I could heal and start fresh. It's been a few months since the divorce was finalized, and while I still feel a mix of anger, sadness, and relief, I'm in a better place. I've focused on being the best father I can be for my kids, making sure they know they're loved and supported, no matter what. They've adjusted to the new custody arrangement surprisingly well, though I can tell they miss the idea of having a normal family. I've tried to be honest with them about what happened, without going into too much detail. They don't need to know everything, just that sometimes people make mistakes, and sometimes things change. As for my ex-wife, she's still with her affair partner, at least as far as I know. I've heard through mutual friends that they're struggling, which doesn't surprise me. Relationships built on lies rarely last. I don't wish her ill, but I also don't feel sorry for her. She made her bed, and now she has to lie in it. Looking back, I realized that the signs were there all along. I just didn't want to see them. I wanted to believe in the person I thought she was, not the person she had become. It's a painful lesson to learn, but I've come out of it stronger. I've learned to trust my instincts, to value myself, and to never settle for less than I deserve. Most importantly, I've learned that no matter how much someone may hurt you, it's up to you to decide how to move forward. Now, my focus is on rebuilding my life and creating a stable, happy environment for my kids. I'm not rushing into anything new relationship-wise, but I'm open to the possibility of love again someday. For now, I'm content with where I am, knowing that I did everything I could to protect my family and to stand up for myself when it mattered most. And that's what this whole experience has taught me. Betrayal can break you, but it doesn't have to define you. You can come out on the other side, stronger and more resilient than ever before. And while I'll always carry the scars of this chapter of my life, they've only made me more determined to live authentically, to value the people who truly care about me, and to never let anyone take advantage of my trust again. Story 6. I was at the park, enjoying a beautiful summer day with my 2-year-old daughter, Lily. We were having a great time on the swings and the slide when we were suddenly approached by a woman with a look of entitlement written all over her face. "Can you please get off the swing? My son wants to use it," the woman said without even a hint of politeness. I was taken aback by her audacity. Sorry, we're not done yet. We'll be off in a minute." "Well, my son wants to use it now, so you need to get off." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "I'm sorry, but we're not done yet. You'll have to wait your turn like everyone else," I said firmly. "Fine, but make it quick," she said before stomping off. I rolled my eyes and continued playing with Lily, but I couldn't shake off the feeling of irritation. Who did this woman think she was, trying to bully us out of the swing? As we moved on to the slide, I noticed the woman eyeing us from a distance. I tried to ignore her, but she was making me feel uneasy. After a few minutes, she approached us again, this time with her son in tow. "Excuse me, but my son wants to use the slide now," she said, pointing at Lily. I looked at her, incredulous. "Are you serious? We're in a public park, lady. You can't just demand that we leave so your son can have a turn." "But my son has been waiting for a long time, and he's getting impatient." "Well, that's not my problem. We're here to have fun, just like everyone else. If your son can't wait his turn, maybe he shouldn't be playing in a public park." The woman looked like she was about to say something else, but I cut her off. "Look, I'm not going to argue with you. We're not leaving, so you can either wait your turn or find another activity to do with your son." With that, I picked up Lily and walked away. I couldn't believe how entitled some people could be, thinking they were more important than anyone else in a public space.